It's January 16th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the arrest of the first sitting South Korean president in the nation's history. Investigators will begin day 2 of questioning the arrested President Yoon Suk Yeol at 2 p.m. Thursday over his martial law order after he faced over 10 hours of questioning the day before. Yoon spent the night at the Seoul Detention Center. Also today, President Yoon's impeachment trial hearing takes place after the first session on Tuesday ended in minutes due to Yoon's absence. His legal team requested rescheduling the hearing as he can't be there in person. Over in Gaza, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a deal that will put the Gaza war on hold for 6 weeks and begin the release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. For the first time in the nation's history, a sitting South Korean president was arrested and taken in for questioning. It took just over 40 days for President Yoon to be arrested as part of the investigation into his martial law declaration. Our Pam Bondi starts us off.
At around 10:30 a.m., President Yoon was arrested at his presidential residence in central Seoul, marking a historic moment in South Korea's political landscape. He was arrested after a 7-hour standoff, with the operation to arrest him beginning in the early morning hours of Wednesday at around 3:20 a.m. This came 43 days after Yoon's short-lived imposition of martial law on December 3rd, making him the first sitting president to become arrested in South Korea's history. This was the second time that the anti-corruption investigators tried to arrest President Yoon, but unlike the first arrest attempt 2 weeks ago, Wednesday's attempt succeeded without any physical encounters. It was carried out rather peacefully, as the presidential bodyguards showed almost no resistance. Investigators passed through defense lines in the residence by using ladders to go over the buses that were parked as barricades, and the team managed to secure entry without any major incidents. But the 64-year-old leader, who has repeatedly said his arrest warrant is not legally valid, did not admit that he was arrested. Rather, he said in a video message on Wednesday that he agreed to cooperate with anti-corruption authorities to prevent bloodshed, adding that the rule of law has completely collapsed after his detention.
불미스러운 유혈 사태를 막기 위해서 일단 불법 수사이긴 하지만 공수처 출석에 응하기로 했습니다.
On social media, he posted another defiant message, a handwritten letter, insisting once again that the imposition of martial law is not a crime, and that it's only an exercise of presidential authority to overcome a national crisis. And throughout Wednesday, thousands of Koreans protested for and against the president. Angry supporters of President Yoon rallied overnight, holding up signs that said they would fight with the president. Around 30 of them even laid down on the roads, and some were seen crying. Meanwhile, those against Yoon also came out to protest. After the impeached leader was arrested, anti-Yoon protesters cheered, while Yoon supporters were seen crying and wailing. Pam Bondi, Arirang News.
The questioning for President Yoon lasted nearly 11 hours on Wednesday and will resume this afternoon, investigators say. We go live to our Kim Do-yeon at the investigator's office. Do-yeon, while today is supposed to be the second day of questioning, it's unclear whether President Yoon will be coming from Seoul Detention Center at all, right?
Good morning, Dami. That's right. Today was supposed to be the day 2 of questions for President Yoon on his charges of insurrection due to his declaration of martial law last month. But as you said, it was initially set to start at 2 p.m., but it may not actually happen today at all. Now, according to according to reports, President Yoon's legal team have asked for a delay to start of questioning due to health issues, but now have stated that Yoon has nothing more to say and says he won't take questions. What seems to be a lack of cooperation from Yoon reflects his stance on the investigation from the beginning. He's called it illegal as he says the CIO does not have the investigative authority over insurrection charges. And as he left the presidential residence yesterday morning, he said he only gave in to investigators and was detained to prevent any unfortunate clashes between the investigators and the Presidential Security Service.
Well, Doyeon, walk us through the first day of the questioning on Wednesday, nearly 11 hours of questioning.
That's right. President Yoon spent 10 hours and 40 minutes being questioned here at the CIO starting 11 a.m. Now, prosecutors at the CIO have been questioning President Yoon on his motives and the preparation process for the declaration of martial law and what his specific orders were when the military raided the National Assembly and the National Election Commission, among others. What we know so far is that he's remained silent for the most part, and if he moves to the CIO for questioning today, he will likely continue to do so as well. The CIO has to be mindful of time, though. The warrant issued by the court only gives him 48 hours to detain President Yoon, and based on the questioning, they will request for a warrant that will allow them to detain President Yoon for up to 20 days. All that needs to be done by Friday morning, as Yoon's detention started around 10 a.m. yesterday.
Doyeon, time is indeed ticking. Now, pro and anti-Yoon protesters are now arriving at the investigator's office there where you're standing. How are things looking there at the moment?
That's right, Dami. Well, as you said, the questioning might not even happen here at all. You can hear the protesters, and it hasn't stopped them from coming early in the morning, in fact, with dozens of them right now. And according to what they're saying, there will be more throughout the day. But as of now, all I see are dozens of protesters in support of President Yoon. The police also started forming barriers with buses to prevent any unfortunate incidents starting early in the morning as well. Of course, overnight around here, there was an incident when someone lit themselves on fire. The person is in critical condition, and it's unknown whether the action was in support or against President Yoon, but we'll find out more. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Dami.
Alrighty, Doyeon, thank you for that report. Now, President Yoon wrapped up the first day of questioning before being moved to Seoul Detention Center. Now, that will be his home until questioning by investigators comes to an end. Our Shin Ha-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk Yeol was taken to the Seoul Detention Center in Uiwang, Gyeonggi-do Province at 9:50 p.m. on Wednesday, where he spent his first night in a cell to himself. Yoon was taken by car from the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials after 10 hours of questioning. This unprecedented situation with the sitting president being detained has raised questions about security at the prison, but no specific rules are in place. The Presidential Security Service has reportedly discussed security measures with the detention center. However, an official from the Ministry of Justice said discussions about Yoon's security are confidential and cannot be confirmed. The room, about 10 square meters, is reported to have a toilet, television, foldable mattress, and other essentials. There is no bed, but the floor is heated with CCTV monitoring the room. Former Presidents Roh Tae-woo and Park Geun-hye were held at this detention center, and currently former minor opposition party leader Cho Guk, sentenced for academic fraud involving his children, is serving time there. Yoon's breakfast on Thursday morning included cereal, boiled eggs, nuts, and milk. Until a decision is made on another type of arrest warrant seeking a longer period of detention, Yoon will be moving back and forth between the CIO for questioning and the detention center. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And the second hearing for President Yoon's impeachment trial takes place today after justices adjourned the first meeting due to his non-appearance. Now, given his arrest on Wednesday, his lawyers have asked for the hearing to be rescheduled. We now head over to the Constitutional Court with our Oh Soo-young standing by. Hello there, Soo-young.
Good morning, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, for obvious reasons, the president cannot attend the hearing today.
That's right. President Yoon's lawyers have requested the Constitutional Court to postpone the second impeachment trial hearing, which was scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Now, this came after President Yoon's detainment and questioning by state investigators from Wednesday morning until late into the night. Yoon's lawyers are reportedly claiming that holding a hearing during his detention violates his right to go to the court as the respondent. Now, as he's already missed his first session, if he does not attend Thursday's hearing, then justices can proceed to begin a full-fledged trial without him. We have yet to hear whether the court will agree to postpone the session, but if it goes ahead, we're likely to see a strong protest from Yoon's lawyers. Now, the trial already has had a rocky start, with the president's legal team filing a series of objections to the court. These include an objection to the first hearing and the court's decision to fix 5 hearing dates without consultation, both of which the court has rejected. Now, Yoon's side has also objected to the court's decision to accept ongoing investigation records as evidence, saying that this violates trial rules. His team has further cited security concerns in attending the trial, filing for an injunction against arrest warrants by state investigators.
Now, Soo-young, do remind us the key points and also the arguments expected to be raised in the trial today.
Sure thing, Tammy, but at this point, it's hard to expect a smooth trial process with organised arguments. It's going to be rather messy, as President Yoon's lawyers and the National Assembly's impeachment panel trying to remove him from office failed to narrow their differences over the main grounds for impeachment in the 2 pre-trial sessions that they have. And initially, the National Assembly's panel, they set out 4 to 5 main grounds for impeachment, and this included the declaration of martial law on December 3rd, and various actions that they claimed disrupted the constitutional order. Now, in a written response to the court on Tuesday, Yoon's team claimed that martial law was justified due to suspicions of election fraud and the opposition-led parliament sabotaging governance, among other reasons that put the country in a state of crisis akin to war or a national emergency. But the biggest point of contention continues to be whether insurrection stands as a main ground for impeachment. The National Assembly's panel withdrew it from their argument as they want to speed up the verdict. But Yoon's side argues that the Assembly cited insurrection as a major reason for impeachment in their resolution, so removing it from the debate undermines the trial's legitimacy. Now, court justices have been reportedly comprehensively reviewing this matter, but until now they've been emphasizing the importance of speeding up the trial.
Alrighty, Soo-young, thank you for keeping us updated. South Korea's central bank held its key interest rate steady on Thursday morning as the Korean won remained weak. It announced a decision following the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year. Now, the move keeps the benchmark interest rate unchanged at 3% and comes after 2 consecutive quarter-point cuts in both the October and November monetary policy meetings last year. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said if he were in the White House, Seoul would be paying $10 billion a year to station U.S. forces Korea in South Korea, while he will be back in the Oval Office next Monday. Now, what next for South Korea? Let's turn to Professor Mason Ricci. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with where Trump's rather obsessive and aggressive take on defense cost sharing with countries around the world came from originally.
I think it comes from two places, really. The first of which is a long-standing belief by Trump that countries that are allies of the United States should essentially be financially more prone to paying the United States something in the effect of protection money, really. And that goes back to the 1980s, really. And in particular, this is the case, I think, with the Asian allies, although it's increasingly been the case with European allies, too, that he essentially thinks that those countries are taking advantage of the United States as security guarantees for them, and also taking advantage of them financially. And so, one way to get around that in his head involves these types of burden sharing agreements. The second thing, is I think that Trump misunderstands fundamentally what alliances are about, and he doesn't see them as partnerships in which the United States also gets something positive out of it, but rather as an obligation or some type of responsibility that the United States takes on behalf of another country. And he thinks that in that sense, other countries should therefore be responsible for paying the United States for this type of protection money.
Well, we have to talk about why Trump is targeting Seoul specifically. I mean, is he trying to take advantage of the situations here on the Korean Peninsula? What's your take on it?
So I think Seoul has a number of things going against it, or South Korea more generally has a number of things going against it. The first of which is a positive trade balance with the United States, which, as I mentioned, is something that has always irked Trump going back even to the 1980s. At the time, it was about Japan having a positive trade balance with the United States. So I think that's part of it. And as I said, he doesn't understand, or at least seemingly doesn't understand, the fact that the U.S.-South Korea alliance, like the other U.S. alliances, also provides positive benefits for the United States. So this is a long-standing set of beliefs that Trump has about alliances. They're not about order building, as far as he's concerned. They are highly transactional. And this is not something new in his thinking. And so I don't think that the way in which he's been aggressively communicating the way that he wants to take a harder line on South Korea has anything to do with South Korea's current vacuum in leadership and the current vulnerability and weakness in South Korean government. I think the interesting question will be to what extent the Trump administration has that weakness in South Korea on its radar and would choose to use that vacuum in leadership and that government and cabinet weakness here as a vulnerability that they could exploit in order to try to get a better deal out of South Korea, whether it be on the special measures agreement for host nation military support, or whether it be renegotiating the Chorus Free Trade Agreement.
It is indeed a concern that South Korea is going through such a political turmoil ahead of the new U.S. leadership coming in. Now, does that mean he will not reignite the debate as soon as he takes office? Do you think it'll happen soon, or is it not one of his priorities?
So I think that the silver lining for South Korea on this is that the Trump 2.0 agenda includes quite a bit of obviously domestic related issues. There are also a lot of other problems in the world right now that Trump is interested in, at least in principle, including the Russia-Ukraine war.
Right.
So there's a chance, I think, that simply because of the number of things that the Trump administration are going to be interested in doing domestically and internationally, that South Korea or the Korean Peninsula or even in some sense Northeast Asia more generally may not be the first thing that Trump turns to. I think the second thing is we have to remember at least normal administrations tend to come in and do a fairly substantive review of current policy.
Right.
And so there's, I think, built into the system normally several months worth of policy review. Of course, there will be some things that the Trump administration wants to roll out right away. But for a number of issues, there will be policy reviews, and perhaps one of those is going to be the U.S.-South Korea alliance. And I think it's also worth pointing out that I think that some of his national security team and his foreign policy team are pretty big supporters of the U.S.-South Korea alliance, and that's fairly widely shared. And so I think that some of those people are probably going to try to pump the brakes a little bit on trying to push South Korea too hard on the SMA, at least at first.
Well, then I have to ask you, is it safe to say that he won't scrap the defense cost-sharing deal that South Korea and Washington sealed last November? Or will he at least try to use it as a leverage to get something else?
I don't think it's safe to say that he won't scrap it, but that's not, I think, the most likely option. I think that the most likely option is some type of renegotiated agreement. And I think that this time, perhaps even more so than in his first term, when, again, he made some very significant demands for increases from South Korea, is that the world is a more complex place. It's more interconnected than it was before. The risks, I think, are interconnected between theaters and between countries. And so I think that there's a greater sense in which the SMA might be connected to other issues, and there might be possibilities both on the U.S. side and on the South Korean side to use various elements of leverage that probably wouldn't have played in as much as before. So I think that we're probably going to get some type of renegotiation, and I think it's going to be fairly complex given the amount of elements of leverage that both sides can use to try to pressure the other.
Before I let you go, Professor Ritchie, what can or should South Korea do so that Trump doesn't see South Korea as an ATM and, increase pressure on Seoul to pay a greater share of defense costs?
Well, the best thing that they could have done would have been to avoid the martial law scenario and the government breakdown that's happened ever since December 3rd. But unfortunately, that horse has left the barn. The fact of the matter is that the current acting president and his cabinet have weakened leverage. And so in that sense, I think they're just going to have to hope that the Trump administration doesn't come in with very quickly with an enormous amount of pressure in this area, as well as in other areas in terms of the U.S.-South Korea relationship. Beyond that, I think the important thing that South Korea needs to remind the United States of, and I know that they've already done it and will probably continue to do it, is that South Korea is very valuable for the United States in its larger effort to contain China. This is very valuable real estate in Northeast Asia, where the United States has 28,500 troops on the ground. It is a very important partner with Japan and the trilateral relationship. And that's also important vis-a-vis China, which is a huge focus for the Trump administration. And currently, right now, South Korea is also the largest foreign direct investor into the United States. And that financial component, I think, will play to South Korea's advantage, too. So I think that they should hit on those talking points as much as they possibly can.
Alrighty. Professor Ritchie, thanks so much for sharing your insight with us this morning. You have a great day.
Great. Thanks. You have a great day also.
In other news, a ceasefire deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. The 6-week ceasefire will begin Sunday and includes the exchange of prisoners and hostages. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire deal that will put a halt to the conflict in Gaza for 6 weeks, beginning on Sunday. Qatar's prime minister announced a ceasefire deal on Wednesday, adding his hope that the pause in fighting will lead to an eventual permanent ceasefire.
Qatar, the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United States are happy to announce the success of joint mediation efforts in order to reach a deal between the parties in conflict in the Gaza territory, to exchange prisoners and hostages, and a return to a prolonged truce that achieves a permanent ceasefire between the two sides.
As part of the ceasefire deal, the Palestinian militant group is expected to release 33 Israeli hostages initially. In exchange, Israel released 30 Palestinian prisoners for every Israeli hostage and 50 Palestinian prisoners for every one of the 5 female Israeli soldiers being held in Gaza. Within the first 42 days of the deal, females and hostages under 19 years old will be released. They make up the 33 Israeli hostages mentioned in the agreement. Reports say some 1,650 Palestinian prisoners could be released as part of the deal. Pundits say the growing pressure to have Israeli hostages returned home forced Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to the ceasefire deal, while others say the election of Donald Trump was behind it. However, both Trump and U.S. President Joe Biden were quick to take credit. Speaking from the White House on Wednesday, Biden said the deal was reached under the precise contours of a plan he set out in May last year. Biden added that the ceasefire deal was the result of painstaking American diplomacy. On the other hand, Trump took to Truth Social to say that the ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of his historic victory in November. Biden says negotiations will continue beyond the latest temporary ceasefire to phase 2 of the deal that could include a permanent halt to the conflict in Gaza. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Dami.
So, Ji-hee, with Donald Trump's inauguration just around the corner, we are seeing a series of confirmation hearings for his cabinet picks. Now, let's start with the U.S. Attorney General nominee's confirmation hearing.
Right. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, vowing to maintain the Justice Department's independence. Now, Bondi, who previously served as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 to 2019, said she will not allow politics to influence her decisions and that her duty is to uphold the rule of law. While Democratic senators expressed concerns about her close ties to Trump, particularly her role as his lawyer during his 2020 impeachment trial and her comments related to the 2020 election, Republican senators voiced confidence in her confirmation. Bondi also emphasized that her overriding objective would be to keep Americans safe and get back to basics. Over in China, the Ministry of Commerce issued a statement denouncing recent U.S. trade restrictions, particularly those targeting China's semiconductor industry. It said the Biden administration's expansion of export controls were economic coercion and a violation of international trade rules. The Commerce Ministry spokesperson added that such measures disrupt global supply chains and harm the interests of both Chinese and American companies. This follows the U.S. Commerce Department's recent addition of several Chinese tech firms to its export control list, aiming to limit China's access to advanced semiconductor technologies. In South Africa, a police operation has retrieved at least 78 bodies from an illegal gold mine. Hundreds of miners had been trapped for months in the mine in Stilfontein, with the police trying to force them out by cutting off food and water. The operation also rescued 246 survivors from the mine, with many of the survivors in such bad condition from lack of food and water that they were unable to walk. The South African government's harsh measures to attempt to curb illegal mining have drawn criticism from human rights groups and community members.
Central parts of Korea could see a mix of rain and snow today, starting earlier in the day, but should subside by the late afternoon. Gangwon-do province could see up to 5 centimeters. The capital area could also see flurries around lunchtime to mid-afternoon. Please stay safe on the road. The cold snap should ease today, with top temperatures going up much higher this afternoon, topping out at 5 degrees Celsius here in the capital, but it will be rather cloudy all day. The rest of the country will also notice afternoon highs going 2 to 7 degrees higher. Daejeon tops out at 7 degrees, Daegu, Busan at 8 degrees, with decent air quality expected nationwide. After today's wintry precipitation, we can expect much brighter skies with temperatures gradually getting warmer. Just for the heads up, there will not be any major cold snap next week as well. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.